All right, Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Harakah, Kodash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to all the hopeful elect brothers that's doing the will of the Lord in sincerity and in truth. Now, this is John 8 and 44. It says, Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this out is because the verdict came. This is from The Guardian. It says, Georgia teen who killed 4 in school shooting sentenced to life in prison without parole. Man, if this ever was an Israelite that did that, and Israelites don't really do this type of stuff. Jake is wicked. Jake can get pretty evil and nasty, but you rarely see Israelites, so-called black people, so-called native, so-called Latino people. They're rarely in the news when it comes to this. Even at all. Georgia teen who killed 4 in school shooting sentenced to life in prison without parole. Cole Gray pleaded guilty to 55 counts, including murder, for shooting at Apalachee High School in 2024. Now, let me bring it back to this, John 8 and 44. Because this is going to explain it. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. Now this is now Yahweh Shah was referring to wicked Israelites. That was back then during his time, and they were following in the ways or the footsteps of the devil, which is the so-called white man. And back then, when the Lord is around 2,000 years ago, the Romans that were ruling over the Israelites were so-called white people. They were Edomites, right? So he was saying that, basically Esau is your father. The devil is your father. He wasn't saying that they were Edomites. He was just saying that, you are following, in his ways. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because the murderer from the beginning was who? That was Cain, when you go back to the story of Cain and Abel. Cain was the first murderer. He slew his brother Abel because he was jealous, and he hated his brother Abel. And then that same spirit of Cain got reincarnated back on the earth after the flood as Esau, right? So it's that same spirit. So so-called white people today, the Edomites, the so-called Caucasians, they are the descendants of Cain, right? So that's their legacy. When you go back to it, Cain, Esau. Now today you have mass school shooters. You have the ICE. They're rounding up Israelites and sending them to detention centers, torturing them. RAPE-ing the young Israelite woman, and putting them to sleep, deleting them, because that's him. He's a murderer. The Lord made him to be the wicked. He's a sword of the Lord. He's everything negative, on earth, all compact into a man. He's everything negative, everything wicked. He has a wicked soul. But the Most High made him like that for a reason, because you have good and then you have evil. The Most High made good and evil. He was a murderer from the beginning. When you go back to the time of Cain and Abel, and abode not in the truth, because they knew the truth. It was oral back then. It wasn't written down. The laws and the commandments wasn't written down back then, but they knew the truth because you had prophets back then, right? And also, Adam and Eve, before Eve got enticed by the devil, by the serpent, they didn't commit sin, so they knew what was wrong. They knew what was right, and then for a period of time they didn't go off, until Eve got tricked by the serpent, and then she went to Adam, and Adam listened. But they had prophets back then, right? They had prophets back then. So both Cain and Abel knew what to do and knew what to do. But Abel offered a righteous sacrifice and Cain didn't, and Cain got jealous, right? And it's the same spirit right now, the same jealous, murdering, envious, devilish, Baal and Molech worshiping, demon. Let me see if I could get it. It was First John 3:12, I believe. Let me see. First John 3:12. I just want to make a point, and then I'll get back to the verdict. First John 3:11 to 12. For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. And that's concerning the body of Yahushua, the brotherhood. We're supposed to love each other. Now, we're not perfect. We're in the flesh. So, certain things our brothers do is going to rub you the wrong way. And if a brother's going off and he don't want to listen, that's going to irritate you, right? So it's natural to have disagreements, but we're supposed to love each other. And love is the keeping of the commandments. How you interact with your brother, how you interact with your neighbor. For example, you're not supposed to commit adultery with your neighbor's wife. You're not supposed to steal. You're not supposed to murder. Thou shalt not kill is really going into murder. And, Cain broke that. He was a first murderer. For this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Yeah, we should have a brotherly love towards each other. And that includes telling, your brother when he's going off. Verse 12, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil and his brother's righteous. Because Abel was offering righteous sacrifices to the Lord, and then Cain, what did Cain do? Cain knew what to do, but he didn't want to do it. He sacrificed the wrong thing to the Lord. So Let me go back to John 8:44. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth. And that same legacy continues today. When you go back to colonization, when you go back, when you go into today, you know, they're still taking over countries. You have the Amalekites, you know, in the Middle East, right? The juice box people, they are expanding the land, right? Because they want the same portion of land that was promised to Abraham by the Most High. That in the kingdom, the borders of Israel is gonna expand. You know, it's not gonna be that small anymore. But that's what the Amalekites, the juice box people, want to do right now. But it's not their land. You know, they're trying to force a blessing that the Most High took away from them. And what are they doing? They're murdering they're murdering the Palestinians. They're going over to Lebanon. You know, they're going at it with Iran. You know, the least of the flock shall draw them out. They drew out Babylon, you know, Esau over here to war with the Persians, and now they're trapped. This is WW3. So it's the same legacy of murder. You know, he was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth because there is no truth in him. The Most High made him to be a devil, you know, to be a murderer. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, and he's a liar. He's a liar. For example, whenever like a country discovers like a very good essential resource, or like whenever they discover a whole bunch of gold that they have in their country, Esau goes over there under the guise of something else. They're like, oh, they make up some story like, we want to go protect the gold, when they really want to go steal the gold. He's a liar. He says one thing, but he means something else. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So Esau is the father of lies because he has the same spirit as Cain. Now, this right here, it says, this is New York Post, Georgia school shooter Colt Gray sentenced to life without parole.
Your crimes do reflect permanent incorrigibility, and I will sentence you to life without parole for each of the malice murders that you committed. All right, for the record, we're all present. The state has the right.
I know he's had a bad upbringing, but like I said, the defects. In this courtroom, we've seen a lot worse.
Salakia, fair use.
He's the only one in the history of Georgia who has ever taken an assault rifle into a public school and opened fire on perfect strangers simply so he could be famous.
And that's what they're known for. They're famous for slaughtering a whole bunch of people. Let's go to ChatGPT, right? That's their legacy. I typed in the search in America. That's a question I asked. In America, what race of people are mostly involved in committing school shootings? What's the response? In the United States, if you look at perpetrators of public school shootings over the past several decades, I believe the first major school shooting was at Columbine, and that was in the 90s, I believe. That was when I was very young. of public school shootings over the past several decades, the majority have been male. Oh, and I don't remember if I said it, but the Amalekites, the juice box people, you know, the ones that have small hats, those people are the top tribe of the Edomites. And recently, a lot of states passed a bill, I believe, into law to merge the military of America and the juice box people. The majority have been have been male, and a large portion have been white. However, the exact percentages vary depending on how school shooting is defined and which database is used. Broadly, sex overwhelmingly. And what does overwhelm mean? Meaning a majority. Overwhelmingly male, which means a lot of it, well over 90% in most studies. Overwhelmingly, like if you have say for example, if you have like a man and a woman, and then they have children, and they have 7 children, they have 5 boys and 2 girls. The gender of their children is overwhelmingly male because it's 5 of them compared to 2 girls. That's just an example. Race: white perpetrators make up the largest single racial group in many data sets of mass or targeted school shootings. Most are teenagers or young adults. So it says a high profile targeted, like Columbine, I think that was the first major one, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde. I don't know how to spell that. I don't know how to pronounce that. Uvalde. White males have historically been the largest demographic group among perpetrators. Right? Now let's continue. I'm going to get this and get some more scriptures. I'm going to read this response. It says a history of bloodshed during colonialism. Right after.
This is not easy, Your Honor. As the son of boys, the father of boys, I understand completely what Dr. Richard said. 14-year-olds have not fully formed into what they're going to become. I completely agree with that, and I understand that. But we've seen no evidence he has any ability to develop a conscience or any ability to ever fully value human life.
Judge, this is a hard decision.
I have a scripture for that. I'm gonna get one of these. Psalms 14. Yeah, let me get Psalms 14 and 1. To the chief musician, a psalm of David. Salakia. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no Most High. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. And that's all Esau does, is abominable works. You know, filthy, unrighteous acts. The biggest alphabet people are Edomites, and they push it because they worship Satan. You know, worshiping Satan and pushing for this alphabet lifestyle is an abominable work. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. So none of them are good. There's no such thing as a good Edomite. Let me get another one. It's in the same verse, same chapter. They are all gone aside because they don't follow or worship the Most High. They worship Satan naturally. They are all gone aside. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. So no Edomite is going to be saved because none of them are good. They're all wicked. As a nation, they are the wicked. In the kingdom, they're going to be servants, and they're going to get the worst treatment out of all the heathen. Because look at what they did to us. What's this guy's name? Nolan, which that's his fault for, hanging with Edomites. Nolan Wells. The murder plot linked to Christopher Nolan. Nolan Wells is his name. The Jake that went to go party with Esau. He was like the only so-called black guy there. So honestly, that was his fault. He got too comfortable around Edomites. And the way that they did it, it just sounded like everything was set up from the beginning. It sounds like it was a ritual. It sounded like it was a ritual murder. So there is no good Edomite. None of them can be saved, and none of them can repent.
Because so many folks have been injured in ways that are indescribable. We've heard.
All right. Some more scriptures, and then I'm going to end it. I have a lot down here, but let me get Hebrews. No. Let me get Ezekiel 35:5. Ezekiel 35 verse 5. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. So since the beginning, since the time of Jacob and Esau, and even before that, during the time of Cain and Abel, Satan, the devil, has had a hate, has a strong hate towards the righteous, which the righteous as a nation are the Israelites, descendants of Jacob, right? The 12 tribes of Israel, which is the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. That's why they hate us today. I watch certain videos of like white people trying to explain like why they hate Jake so much, especially the so-called black man, especially Judah. And it's like they list out all the things that they don't like or that they hate about Jake, but they just don't know why. And it's because it's spiritual. Good is set against evil. they're evil, and even though a lot of our people are going to be destroyed for their wickedness, they're still Israelites. They're still going to be righteous in the kingdom. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, a long-lasting, a long-running, and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So Esau has a history of bloodshed. And this is this is the inquiry that I typed in. History of bloodshed during colonialism, and then I'm gonna end it. The history of bloodshed during colonialism spans several centuries and affected nearly every inhabited continent. Colonialism often involved military conquest, forced labor, displacement, famine, disease. Esau gave the Native Americans smallpox. They brought over diseases from Europe that wasn't over here. Jake over here in the Americas before Esau came, there was no diseases over here at all. But that's what he brought, because he's death. He represents death. Forced labor, they forced the natives over here to work the mines, and if they didn't meet the quota, their hands would get chopped off. Forced labor, displacement, famine, disease, and resistance wars. While not every colonial encounter was equally violent, many involved large-scale loss of life. All right, so the Americas, late 1400s to 1800s. European powers such as Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and the Netherlands colonized the Americas. And those are Edomites. Coming back into power during the Renaissance, conquering the whole world. Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Major causes of death include warfare against indigenous peoples, the northern kingdom of Israel here in the Americas, the so-called Latinos and native and indigenous people here, right, of North, Central, and South America. They're Israelites from the northern kingdom. Warfare against indigenous peoples, and Esau slaughtered millions of them. Diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza. I think influenza is a common cold. Let me see. Influenza. Oh, the flu. I'm sorry. Influenza is a flu, which devastated populations with no prior immunity, which means that their immune system was weak to it, because they didn't have those diseases over here. So when it came, their immune system couldn't fight against it, which devastated populations with no prior immunity. Forced labor systems, including the Spanish encomienda, mass displacement, and destruction of indigenous societies. Okay, Africa, 1800s to 1900s. King Leopold's rule over the Congo Free State, where forced labor, and those are Israelites, violence, starvation, and disease contributed to millions of deaths. And King Leopold, I believe, was from Belgium. And in the Congo, that's where they found the rubber tree, or the latex tree. And that made them super rich, because right now you have rubber for tires, for cars, bikes. Rubber is everywhere. Colonial wars by Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Italy. Now this is all the history, and it's still continuing. But he's gonna get judged in the end. I'm gonna make a part 2 to this. I'm about to end it. I'm about to end this lesson because I have to go back. I have to come off break. Where colonial wars by Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Italy, and others against African kingdoms and communities, suppression of resistance movements, often with severe reprisals. Now, I'm gonna make a part 2 with the same info. Lord will is edifying. All praises, honor, and glory goes to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Harakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of great